started, I'd like to introduce to you Jeff Haven, who is the new park interpreter at Davidsonville. He was raised in Springfield, and I'm not sure where he's worked for the Park Services, but he may tell us a little bit about that. But this is the 200th anniversary of Davidsonville, and we thought it would be very appropriate, and we appreciate his coming to tell us all about Davidsonville, particularly how it was back then, or what they know about it and how they found it out. And as a program note, I'd like to say that next week I did get a call from Harmon, and he's out of the hospital, but he's just not feeling real good, so he won't come. But we have 3 Iraqi combat veterans who are going to talk about their first-person history in that conflict. So that should be real interesting. So be sure to come next week as a fill-in for Harmon. Then I told Harmon that we would probably have another series in the winter or in the spring. And everybody's really interested in what he has to say also. But I want to hear from Jeff all about Davidsonville. So thank you for coming, and this is going to be really informative and interesting and fun. So thanks a lot, Jeff.
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing tonight?
Fine.
Cool. All right. Like you said, my name is Jeff Havens. I am the new park interpreter at Davidsonville Historic State Park. Old Davidsonville to all of us in this room here, and I'm very happy to be here tonight. And I'll start just tell you a little bit about myself. So I was born and raised in Springfield, Missouri. I am 24 this year, so I'm kind of a younger historian, but age is no barrier, right? I did my undergraduate in history from Truman State University up in Kirksville, Missouri, if anyone knows where that is. And most recently was out in Montana for 2 years, enjoying the mountains for a master's in park and recreation management. Over the course of the last 6 years, I've worked at national parks, national forests, and now came back home to the Midwest I know and love so well to work for your Arkansas State Parks as a permanent park interpreter here at Davidsonville. So tonight, more or less what I want to talk about tonight is what we know about Davidsonville, the town, and how we got to know what we know. And has anyone, I should ask this, who here has been to Davidsonville before? Okay, lots of you, wonderful. Who here has been to Davidsonville within the last 5 years? The last year? Okay, so for those of you who haven't been in the last year, we just opened our new visitor center. We moved in December, we had our grand opening in May. It's a brand new visitor center. We have an exhibit room, which is the first time we've ever had a real space to show off all the stuff we found from the various archaeological digs, some of our archival documents, and we also have an awesome exhibit on river travel from the time period. So if you haven't been in the last year or so, come on down. Our visitor center is open every day from 8 to 5, and we'd love to have you out there to show you around our new visitor center. It's really, really quite a wonderful resource for the park. But for tonight, what I want to talk about are essentially the reasons why we know what we know. And so the big 3 reasons we know anything at all about Davidsonville are 1, oral histories, 2, archival documents, and 3, archaeology. And so what I want to kind of do is walk you through the history of the town as we know it. But we're kind of going to do it in reverse, because we're going to start the day after town was abandoned, move up to present day, talking about all the research and all the archaeological digs that have happened, all the interviews and oral histories we gained, and then once we hit present day, we're going to jump back and talk about the specifics of the town and how we were able to figure out the various elements, the various specifics of the town that we know about today. So I'm going to start, let's go back to the year 1830, maybe 1833. Town was abandoned for a number of reasons, which we'll talk about here towards the end. The folks who were living in Davidsonville moved away. They left. And for 20 or so years, while there were people living in the township area around where the town had once been, nobody called the town home that we know of. We don't have any records that stated that. We don't have any family histories. And in fact, the first account we have of someone moving back to where the town site was came about 1880 or so, when the Scott family moved to the area. Bum Scott was the elder of the Scotts, and he would have fought in the Civil War. He served for the Confederate Army, and after his discharge at the end of the war, he came back to this area of Arkansas and settled a homestead. And during that era, very, very few bridges across the Black River. Today we have a couple of very nice new ones. They're in the process of building a new one. I know that's kind of been a source of contention in the few months that I've been here. But back in the day, there were no bridges. And so to get across the river, ferries were operated. Your pull-across ferry, you'd pay the ferryman and he'd transport you, your horse, your wagon, your family, whatever you needed taken across the river for a nominal charge. And so the elder Scott built and operated a ferry from about 1880 till about 1910 at his death, where his son, Joseph Scott, took over the family business. Now, the younger Scott, as he was growing up, Joseph was told stories of Davidsonville, allegedly from an old slave who had lived and helped build the town. And so this memory of a place survived from this oral tradition of storytelling. The slave told Joseph, and Joseph told it to his kids, and so on and so forth. And this was really important as a background to preserving the town, because Joseph knew about this place. He didn't plow the town site or farming fields. Great area for farming, lots of rich soil. But whenever you take a plow into an artifact field like that, and your blade goes 3 and 4 and 5 inches underground, if not more, you just tear up the artifacts. You lose a lot of the details. Things shatter, things disintegrate, and he didn't do that. He kept it, he plowed around it, but he did not plow the town site itself, to the best that we know. And so because of that, the site was left undisturbed all the way up until 1930 when he died and a flood destroyed his ferry. So the Scott family passed that legacy on from abandonment all the way to the 1930s. Moving forward from there, the Davis family in the 1950s also knew about the town. It had been passed on through family histories and wanted to find a way to preserve this piece of Arkansas history. And they were the ones who, in talking with the Arkansas state government, were able to convince them through that land donation to make the area a park. So over 100 years of preservation, of careful, not messing with the site, the town site was preserved. And then I have to be honest, the state government came in and we made a mistake. We built a campground right on the town site. We built a road, we built a visitor center, we built a bathroom on the town site, and we don't have any record of what might have been lost during that construction. But when we were finding artifacts half a foot below ground or less, it's very probable that during that construction of the initial campground for the state park, we lost a piece of history. So, our bad. We've gotten better since then. Moving forward, as a state park, not much archaeology was done on the site until the 1970s. We had guesses, we had family histories that told us there was a courthouse and there was post office and things like that, but we didn't have any specifics. And in fact, in 1970, when an archaeologist started piecing things together, he essentially wrote, nothing has been done so far. We're very much relying on diaries, on personal accounts to tell us what had happened at the town site. And so the first thing he did is he started with the town plat, so how the town was laid out. He went back, he did measurements, trying to determine where roads were, where the courthouse square would have been, where various buildings would have been. And we found the courthouse. We found some of the foundation of the courthouse during digs during 1979, 1980. And we also found other various foundations from other buildings on some of the lots. And after that, again, about 20 years passed from that dig to our next archaeological dig. And during that time period, we did a lot of archival research. Thankfully, after Davidsonville was abandoned, all of our court records, all of our county records moved with the courthouse to the different towns that held the county seat over the history of Lawrence County. And so those records are still around today, still exist, and can be found at the Northeast Arkansas Regional Archive, which is near Powhatan Historic State Park. And if you ever want to go read some very, very, very old-time bad handwriting, go spend an afternoon with the archivist out there. She would love to have you transcribe stuff. And we're always looking, we're always trying to transcribe, because that's a huge mine of information that we're still exploring even to this day. I'm going to go over next week, for example, and look at some of the court cases. Because every time we read something there, we learn something new. And those archival resources told us all sorts of really interesting stuff about the town site. It told us, for example, we had a jail and a courthouse. And in reading the documents, we learned the jail was built before the courthouse. And in fact, the Missouri the territorial legislature ordered the jail to come first, and any funds that were left over after building it to go to the courthouse. So it kind of makes you wonder, what were they concerned about? Crime? Was crime something that was prevalent in the area? Why was it so important to get this courthouse built first? Among other things, we didn't know what our jail looked like. We didn't know what it was made of until a passing reference came up in a journal article that we found, where someone traveling through noted that Davidsonville had a good wooden jail, and a courthouse was also building at that time. It was 1821. So it's things like that. It's those little references here and there. The people who wrote them had no idea how important their words were to us today, because we're looking for anything, any kind of clue in how we can describe this site for people who visit today. So, archival research, ongoing, still ongoing today, but it has told us so much about who came to town, court sessions that were in town, buildings in town, everything like that. It was from those records we learned we had a brick courthouse. It was from those records we learned what the town looked like, when it was platted, who platted it. All those kind of details came forth from those archival territorial records, and I do have some here, so after I'm done talking, if you'd like to come and look through, you're more than welcome to. 2004 came around, and the Arkansas Archaeological Survey came out in conjunction with us again, and over the next 5 years did another series of much more extensive surveys. They found all the footers for the courthouse. We know where it was oriented, towards the river. They found a number of structures in different lots. We found what was presumed to be the post office. We don't have any proof archaeologically that it was a post office, but again, oral histories have told us, oh, it was on this lot. It was this gentleman's house. All we need is like a U.S. postal button or mail satchel, and we can go, yes, for sure. But because we don't have that, we'll never know until something else happens to turn up, either during a dig or after a heavy rainstorm. 2004-2009, digs were conducted, and we found a multitude of artifacts. I've been told 10,000 plus artifacts on the town site. And it just, it really ranges everything from a piece of glass, to a brick, to coins, to pottery, to, I have here a spigot from a barrel, just all sorts of odds and ends. And these things were so key in telling the story of Davidsonville, because for the first time we could really go, okay, this is a brick from the courthouse. What was this brick used for? How many of them were there? What style were they? Things like that. Glass from window panes. So we had glass windows in our courthouse as well as other buildings as well. A lot of the misconceptions that people who come to Davidsonville have was that it was this very frontier town, Old West style, no nice things, people roughing it on the frontier. And I love pulling out my pair of glasses I have from the visitor center and going, yeah, they had glasses back then. They had, all sorts of these nice things, pendants, fine pottery, fine china, things like that. And I always go, oh, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And so it's been these archaeological expeditions that have really revealed these details about this town, and helped us give a face to the people who lived here. Because without these things, they're just number one, number two, number three. But we found someone's prized piece of china they dropped on the floor. What kind of tragedy must that have been?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think those are pictures right there.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. So here's some of the stuff here behind us. So some of the china cups here that we found. Mm-hmm. Some of the storageware from various establishments, and bullets, things like that, and some coinage over here. And I'm going to pass some of this stuff around here in just a moment too.
We had a lot of that stuff here before.
Yes.
In 2006,
Yes, because I was talking with, I believe, John the other day, and he was telling me how the Heritage Museum here was the initial storage spot for many of our artifacts.
Yeah, we had it for quite a while, some of the things, but we were very impressed with like the fine china, because you think it would be like a tin mug, coffee mug that somebody sitting around a campfire would have.
Sure.
Nice stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the pieces of 8 were very impressive too.
Yes, and a lot of these things, people go, well, how did you get this stuff? And the answer is often it came from St. Louis. So Davidsonville was a river town. We lived and we died by the Black River. And so commerce would come up, upriver from New Orleans and parts south, and it would come downriver from the mouth of the Black River as well. And so anytime you were, so you had a supply, you had a source to get these nice things from, and to trade and to export your cotton, things like that we grew here, as well as import a beautiful china set here. So I'm going to go back to 1815 now. So we hit present day 2009, and we've finally in 2016 had a beautiful new visitor center to display all this stuff. Back to 1815. 1815, we have archival documents from what was in the Missouri Territorial Legislature ordering the creation of Lawrence County. We have that document actually right here, and also ordering the platting of a town seat. So the town was platted. A group of gentlemen met. Went, this is a great spot. We've got the Black River here. We got some high ground. We're not too far from the trail, the Southwest Trail, which was the major road of the day. This is a great place to make a town, and we're going to go ahead and call it Lawrence. Well, that didn't last very long. Lawrence, the town, gave way to Davidsonville, and the name Davidsonville comes from Mr. Davidson, who was a member of the Territorial Legislature, who then lived in town after it was named after him. There is another oral history story that is passed down saying it was named after a Davidson who fought in the Revolutionary War. We've never been able to confirm that, and it seems more likely that name came from the gentleman who served on the legislature and then moved to town. How cool to live in a town named after you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So town was plotted, the jail was built first, and the courthouse came after. And the courthouse is where a lot of our work, archaeologically and archival, has obviously been done. And in unearthing the courthouse, we found hundreds of bricks. We found floor bricks, we found wall bricks, and we found bricks like this. And anyone have an idea why you would shape a brick with an angle like that?
Arch.
An arch?
Or an edge on it.
Yeah, an edge. Yeah, so they were used both on the foot of the courthouse, so right at its base, as well as like off windows and things like that, and were the gutters of the day. So they were designed such that rain that fell would not sink in near the foundation and would run off from that foundation. So little clues like that helped explain why why this courthouse was built the way it was and how it was able to last. I'll pass here. We have some window glass, also from the courthouse. Pass that around if you'd like. The glass of the day was much thinner than our glass today. Insulation was a little harder. It would have been much colder in the winters if you had to go to court during the winter months. But they did have nice glass windows, and so you can just imagine one winter day the clerk of the county sitting at his office, shivering, adding another lump of coal onto the fire, and wishing he had more rags to stuff around the windows. So things like that. Let's see. Also from the courthouse, we have samples of the mortar they used. So, things that would have been used to seal the bricks together. And all these things added together really gave us some concrete details about what this courthouse looked like.
Is that mortar much different than the mortar we use today for bricks?
It's a little simpler than what we use today. Just your lime, your water, and then a couple other things to help it solidify. But it is very similar to what we would use today. And taking all these details, we were able to go to a architect and go, what do you think our courthouse looked like? We found this giant bunch of bricks we found glass like this, we found mortar, and he was able to give us a best guess using his knowledge and the artifacts that we found about what our courthouse would have looked like. And from his advice and suggestions, we were able to build essentially a 3D model that we have now on different exhibits and displays, so you can have an idea of what we think the courthouse looked like. Now we have to put a big asterisk mark on the edge of that, because we could be entirely wrong. But the archaeological evidence, the courthouse designs of the time, and the architect's advice all put together have given us a model that is probably as accurate as we can get without getting in a time machine and going back to 1822 when the courthouse was finished. Interestingly enough, in our archival records, we never have any description of what the courthouse looks like. Just that from time to time repairs were supposed to be made to the building, the sheriff was supposed to add tables and chairs, or that a sale was being held at the courthouse door. No concrete details. So it always strikes me that what is interesting to us today was boring, everyday life to them back then. And it's just a completely different part of history. You know, what do we think is everyday today that historians 300 years from now are going to be going, gee, I wonder what that place looked like back then. What did Walmart look like? Although Walmart will probably be around for as long. Yeah. So in addition to the courthouse, we did uncover a number of other structures, and in one of them, the archaeologists were digging, and we started finding china, which is things like this over here behind me, or this piece that I'll pass around here. And when you find just a few pieces that maybe make a plate or a single dish set, that tells you one thing about a building. Maybe this was a house, and maybe this was that family's prized nice dishware that when they had company over, they pulled out and they served on. And they saved up, they sent to St. Louis, they ordered it, came down, and then one day little Jimmy dropped it maybe. And what kind of tragedy that would have been. When you're digging on a building site and you find hundreds and hundreds of pieces of china like that, well, that paints a whole nother story. That suggests that instead of a single household, this is a building that might have been used as a eatery of some sort. Either a public house, or if they would have had a liquor license, a tavern. And Davidsonville was full of both of those types of establishments as the county seat. The reason being that when the court was in session, everyone came to town. Nominally, we have census data that shows anywhere from 100 to 300 folks living in the area, in the town and in the surrounding. I have up here the census from 1829, so just before town was abandoned. But again, when court was in session, everybody came to town, and it was a gold mine. Everyone in court lasted right around 5 days. Lawrence County was a large county. Initially, the northern third of Arkansas shrunk as time went on, and more counties were subdivided. And, this was a place where you'd come, spend a night or maybe 2 nights, conduct your court business, and then go home. And you needed a place to stay, you needed a place to eat, and, maybe you're going to have a drink after paying your fine, or, celebrating opening your new business license, things like that. So there were a number of both archival records noting that so-and-so had got his license to operate a public house, and also there were things like that where we'd find just a large amount of not only china, but also things like the earthenware container here that might have been used for food storage, for flour storage, or the flask there that might have been used for something a little harder. We still find china like what's going around today. In fact, we had some hikers on our trails the other day who were coming up the road, and they went, "Oh, what's that?" Reached down and picked up a little piece of china, brought it into the visitor center. And so as rain falls and as the soil moves, stuff is constantly being uncovered. And it's so cool to just have someone walk in and put on the desk a piece of 200 to 300-year-old pottery. And I'm not a pottery fanatic or a china fanatic, but we have done research about the patterns and the styles, And a lot of this china that we found comes from London, from England, from France, and was made anywhere from 1750 to 1850. And it's just, I always imagine that piece of china being carefully packaged, shipped over from, across the Atlantic, overland across the United States, down the river from St. Louis, opened, used, and then dropped. What a story, what a travel. And telling those stories is one of the coolest parts of what we're able to do with these artifacts here. Something else, similar is something like here, the spigot that was found also in that area.
Was it driven into the barrel?
Yes, that would have been driven into the barrel to stop. Yeah. Pass that around. So just little things like that which add color and add detail to this sketch of town that we have. And one of my other favorite things that also was found in the same trash pit was money. So your public house, your place of entertainment after a hard day's work, you come in, maybe you're playing dice with your friends, maybe you have a drink or two, and you lose that silver dollar on the floor and it gets swept into the trash. Ouch.
What is this? What is this?
This is the spigot. This is a barrel spigot. It was found in the trash pit.
Put in a barrel?
Yes, you put in your barrel to stop the liquid from flowing. So.
I'm trying to figure what it's made out of.
Yeah, that is a good question. It does appear not to be what made. Looks like some either bone or maybe ivory, like an antler, could be. I'll have to go look. We can look that up. We have a database of everything we found and what we know about it. So that's something that we can certainly look up as well. But it looks to me to be ivory of some sort.
So it stopped it up, or it allowed flow from it?
This one got holes in it, so maybe it's a flow, it control the flow, sort of thing. But
Jeff?
yes.
Would we be allowed to go out ourselves with a metal detector and walk around and turn in anything we found?
Would you be allowed to go out with a metal detector? Because it is a state park, the answer is no. Even though it's a good Samaritan effort, and we love, when we find new stuff, because we are a state institution, we have to go through that archaeological survey to get work done. Yeah. And so now, if you happen to be walking around and you find stuff and you see, a little speck of white below it, and you go, "What's that?" That would be more acceptable. Yeah. But no, unfortunately, metal detectors, things like that, we ask that folks not come out and go looking for artifacts. We are hoping to do another survey here in the next few years, but it is one of those expensive endeavors. So we have to kind of save up our account to do stuff like that.
One more question. You said you found some silver. Did you find any gold?
So we found silver. Did we find any gold? Not so much gold. And the reason we found silver, like what we've got here and what's going around, or what I have here rather, is that silver would have been the type of currency used by both the French, the Spanish, and later the United States governments. And so Davidsonville was initially colonized by the French. Here, I'll pass that around too. And so in the early 1700s, French settlers were the first to really occupy this area of Arkansas. The Spanish were just to the south, and because it was real silver, the country that made the currency didn't matter so much, because a silver dollar is a silver dollar is a silver dollar. And to make change like we have here, if you needed to give someone 50 cents, you would just cut the silver in half, and then again into quarters, and then again into bits. So 8 pieces of 8, if you need to.
That's it.
Yep. Sometimes you'll still hear a quarter referred to as 2 bits, and that's why. Yep. Yep. And interestingly enough, you could scam people with that money, though, because silver deteriorates over time. And so a silver dollar that's 20 years old and has been worn off and has some silver diminished is not worth as much as a new dollar. And so when the United States started introducing, U.S. silver dollars, there was a bit of tension at first, because people would try and hand in this 20-year-old piece of silver that might be 0.8, 0 of ounce or whatever in exchange for a whole ounce of silver. And so that was an issue initially until the currency started really circulating. But yeah, no, that was found in a trash pit from a due to the amount of china and other similar storage where we have defined a tavern. So somebody lost their coin pouch, and it fell into the trash, and 200 years later, we were digging through people's trash and found some real silver. And it really makes me wonder, 200 years from now, what people are going to think about our trash. Although it'll be a little different in 200 years because our trash today mostly goes to landfills. And so we're going to lose something in that at Davidsonville, not every house, but almost every house had some sort of trash pit or something like that where you'd dump out your refuse. We've lost that now because we put our stuff in trash bags and it goes to the dump. And so while we'll be able to say stuff about the city of Pocahontas maybe, or the city of Jonesboro, or the city of Black Rock, we're going to have a lot harder time saying things about specific sites, specific buildings in the future, because we consolidate now. Now that's not a bad thing because the smell of trash everywhere would not be any good, but it's just one of those interesting historical things to talk about. We learn a lot from people's trash today because they just threw it out down a hole near their house. So I do want to talk a little bit about the people who came to Davidsonville, or one person really specifically, one famous person. So our nice brick courthouse was finished in 1822. Just prior to that, Stephen F. Austin, famous, helped found Texas, came through and served a term as judge for the state of Arkansas. Stephen F. Austin attempted, as the territory was formed, to run for Congress for the territory of Arkansas after a hard run of luck in Missouri. Business venture went under, the bank he was working with failed, and he had to move south to start again. So he came to Arkansas, 1819, ran for Congress, lost that election, but had associated with enough folks that the territorial governor did appoint him as judge, the first judicial circuit of Arkansas, which included Davidsonville, the county of Lawrence, and Stephen F. Austin only held that post for 2 months, July and August, before he headed south to go leave his biggest impact on history. But in his 2 months, he did circle around the Davidsonville once. And so we do have record of Stephen F. Austin and the 5-day term that he held of court. Interestingly enough, 2 of the days, Monday, Tuesday, no court was held. They convened court. No business was done, and court ended. The other 3 days were pretty dull. There wasn't a whole lot that went on during that court session. Things like, let's see here, William Stewart, Fergus S. Morrison, and Hiram West were appointed commissioners to view the roads leading by Hicks Ferry and Grace Ferry and measure them. So just kind of everyday business, fixing roads, measuring roads, surveying roads, paying constables, paying sheriffs, things like that. Today we go to court. Today going to court is kind of seen as a bad thing. Go pay your speeding ticket or something like that. But court served served a number of other functions during the time period that were considerably more important. Going to get your paycheck or fixing the roads. Be fun if today you go to the court to complain about a state highway and be appointed to oversee the fixes to that highway. How fun would that be? Or bridges, yes, or bridges. So yes, Stephen F. Austin was in town for 5 days. He held court here. Because the courthouse was not finished yet, it would have been held at somebody's house. So court would have convened. They would have paid somebody for the privilege to hold court at the house, and that's where you'd hold your business for those 5 days or so. And 1822, the courthouse would have been opened, and that would have ended, and it would have been your more traditional brick building like the one just across the street here. Cool. So one other kind of person of note that I want to talk about would be our second sheriff, and that was Sheriff Joseph Hardin. Hardin was one of the tycoons of Davidsonville. He was a very, very busy man. He moved to the area and was one of those who helped plat the town, pick the spot for the town site. And after that was appointed deputy by the first sheriff, James Campbell. And again, some of these things we know through archival records and posting bond for that particular role. Some of that, we have that number of the names of the commissioners who helped pick the town site. So most of this is archival research that I'm relating now. After that, we have a series of licenses that he requested and was granted. So a license to run a ferry, a license to open a store, so on and so forth. And then we have his record as appointment to sheriff himself. So he was town sheriff. He operated the ferry near town, ran a public house in town, and also was something of a land tycoon. He bought something like 1,400 acres over the course, in various spots in Arkansas. And when he died in 1826, he had roughly 1,500 acres to his name, 2 full plots of the town of Davidsonville itself, and was essentially one of the richer, one of the more well-off folks of the town itself. He was I've seen different accounts that said he had a temper. He wasn't the most liked person in town, but I guess you don't have to be liked to do well.
Yeah.
When he did die, he did leave his house and the 2 plots in town to his wife, which was interesting. So he didn't leave her without a penny to live on. So at least he was very considerate in that regard. 1826, getting towards 1830, things started happening in Davidsonville that led to the town's decline. So one of them, we had for the territory and later the state's first land office, but the land surveyor wasn't real fond of Davidsonville as a town site. Davidsonville is surrounded by water, prone to flooding. Occasionally folks had trouble getting here to get their land officially accounted for and surveyed. And so the surveyor, fed up with the delays and the inconvenience, moved his land surveyor office to Batesville, Arkansas, 1820, 1822, sometime around there. After that, the Southwest Trail started to change. So the Southwest Trail, up until 1820, was a series of really footpaths and just kind of spaces through the forest where you could take a wagon if you had to. It was not the preferred way to travel through the state. That would have been by river still. Take your boat downriver, build a raft, float downriver, things like that. Starting early 1820s into the 1830s, the United States Army started doing road improvements along the Southwest Trail from St. Louis down into the Southwest, because this was the route that they had chosen to move troops, to move supplies, as they needed to defend and protect a ever-growing country. When they went through and made these improvements, they rerouted the Southwest Trail, which had passed really close to Davidsonville, several miles further away out of the swampy areas that surrounded the town during that time period. So it went from being where someone going along the trail could make a quick turn, maybe go another few miles, and then stop for the night at town, to the point where it was no longer feasible to do so. And in fact, another town sprouted up right alongside this new military road called Jackson, which is where the county seat moved after Davidsonville was abandoned. So the rerouting of the trail, the ever inconvenient presence of the river flooding every spring, as we are well familiar with, all those things added up to inspire or incite the county officials to move the town seat from Davidsonville 1830. And that moved to Jackson for about 7 years. There are other local histories that have come up that have said a fire destroyed town, that yellow fever struck and killed a bunch of the townspeople. And all our research that we've done and all of our archaeological expeditions that we've done, we've never found evidence to support either one of those claims. If there had been a fire in town that had leveled the place, we would have expected a lot more charcoal, burnt artifacts to be found. We didn't find those things. If it had been yellow fever, it would have been very, very unusual not to find some account of that, either in the county documents or in personal diaries, things like that. We would also expect to find a large grave site somewhere. And while we do have 2 cemeteries in the town site, the Philip Reeve Cemetery, which would have been used during the time period, as well as the later Scott Cemetery, we've never found a large grave. That doesn't mean that it's not there. We just haven't found it yet. Yes.
Well, oral history in the county has been proven right many times and wrong many times as well. But as far as the yellow fever, Memphis had a huge epidemic. Over 5,000 died. All the towns to our east did. It wouldn't have been unusual. Plus, there is oral history that wagon loads of dead from Davidsonville were taken and buried in a cave to the west of Davidsonville. I don't know where the cave is, but
yes,
that's the story.
So the story is that wagon loads were taken from the town and buried in caves. If we ever find that cave, great. Maybe maybe
well,
that's.
There are caves in the area.
But until such time, we look at the other factors, and we recognize those other stories. But until such time as we find that and we can confirm that they are just that.
And another reason given by area historian from Batesville is that all the capital went to Batesville. People investing in that time decided Batesville was the better bet, and that's where the money went, and Davidsonville suffered as a consequence.
Certainly. Yes. So for all those reasons, and you're very right. Capital. If you're not investing in a town, that is also something that can certainly kill a town very quickly. One last thing that I've kind of discovered in the initial research that I've done is that we have archival records offering land up for the building of a church and a school for town. Church and school, both 2 very important institutions for a community. Place to go and worship together, place to go send your kids to go learn. And we don't have any records of either of those buildings having ever been built. So we don't have any record that those 2 things there were supplies donated for such a building. This doesn't mean that there wasn't church in the area. Again, someone's house could have been used. Same for school. There might have been a school marm who opened her house for kids. But we never had an official school building or church building that we know of. And so those 2 keystones of a community might never have been present at Davidsonville. And, how did that affect the decision of a community to move or to stay in 1830 when the county seat moved? So things like that all conspire together to see the town abandoned. And there we go, 1830 again. The cycle picks back up with the Scott family and that oral history there. So without any one of those 3 pieces, archival, archaeological, or oral history, we wouldn't be able to tell the story of Davidsonville like we are today. It's that combination of 3 things, 3 very important pieces of historical research, all working together, that have allowed us to tell this amazing story of the first planned town, the first post office, and the first courthouse in Arkansas. And it's something that work is always still ongoing. We're always looking for new family histories, new stories. We're always doing archival research. And we really hope we get the opportunity to, within the next couple of years, do some more archaeological research as well. In 2011, we added a new piece to the park. Mrs. Sloan gave us a donation, or we had a transaction with Sloan to add the last bit of our town site onto the state park. And so we have a whole bunch of new land that has not been surveyed, and we have no idea of what might be just beneath the surface out there. So it's an exciting time for the park. It's an exciting moment in history, and we can't wait to see what changes next. With that concludes my remarks for this evening. I'd love to take other questions, talk a little bit more about the specifics, talk about any of the artifacts on the table here. So thank you very much.
Was Daniel Boone ever at Davidsonville?
Was Daniel Boone ever at Davidsonville? We don't have any record of him ever being in town. It's possible that he could have passed through town, but if so, we don't have any record. Most of Daniel Boone's activity would have been in the county named after him, but it's possible he could have come through. But if we don't have any accounting of that, so unfortunately, I can tell you I don't know.
You said the population was around 300.
Yeah, 1 to 300, depending, as people moved in and moved out, things like that.
Do you have any idea about how many buildings there were in the town at its height?
Do we have any idea about the number of buildings in the town at its height? Again, we would have to go through and, in process, look at each town, at each block of the town to see if we could uncover foundations and things like that. So I don't. That's one that I don't know that we know as well. With 1 to 300, I couldn't even. I wouldn't even want to give you a guess because I don't know that it would be accurate at all.
How many ghost structures do you have up now?
We've got 2 ghost structures up right now. What those ghost structures are is that they are just iron skeletons of where buildings once were. And so the 2 that are currently up are the courthouse, which is historically where it would have been. It's on that courthouse mound and it's oriented the correct way. We also have a tavern structure. And during that 2004 to 2009 period, the archaeologists uncovered a large foundation and large chimney foundations for a building. Also found a number of ceramics and things like that where it was deduced that there was a tavern there. We were able to take the dimensions of that structure and construct a tavern in what would have been the style of the day for a 2-story structure called a dog trot structure, where it's got a breezeway in the middle and then two pieces on either side. Hoping to add a few more in the future. We've talked about adding the blacksmith's structure. We've talked about adding the jail as a ghost structure in the future. Remains to be seen exactly. We're still kind of planning and thinking about what we might add next.
The bag of marbles.
Oh, bag of marbles, yes. So the bag of marbles here are not from the town site itself, but are from that new land that we gained in 2011. And there was an old house on that piece of land that was removed. And as we were doing removal on that, they happened to be tearing down one of the walls one day and reached in, and lo and behold, we found these. And I'll pass these around. These look to be clay marbles that have been colored, and yeah, some marbles.
How about Indian artifacts? Have you found any?
Sure. Yes. So Native American artifacts on the town site. We do find Native American artifacts around town in general. Specifically, when in 2004 they were doing courthouse excavations, they found the foundation, things like that. They dug a little beneath it and found various Native American tools, arrowheads, tip points, things like that. And from those findings and things around the other parts of the town site, it has been concluded that we did have a Native American settlement before Davidsonville on the town site. And looking at Davidsonville as a river crossing point, it makes a lot of sense because it's a fairly good spot to ford the river. And so as tribes were coming to and from eastern and central Arkansas, it would have been a natural ford to use.
It folded in 1830, you said.
Yes.
Then when did the Scots?
Sure. Yeah, so we have, that's kind of one of the historical mysteries we have. We know they started operating the ferry right around 1880. When they moved there to start living there, we don't have a specific date for that. I would think within the 10 years, but again, the information that we have isn't specific on that.
I talked to a lady this morning, we were talking about this tonight, and she said that her maiden name was Scott,
and that her grandmother took her around, all around that area, and showed her the hanging tree and several other places. And she is Wilma Ungerling is her name. But her maiden name was Scott, and her grandmother Scott is the one that showed her all around Davidsonville. So
Wonderful.
I don't know if she would have more info or
Yeah, the one writing I have here says in 1850 the town was the family settled, near the town site. But this is a handwritten page, and I'm not sure of where it came from, so I don't want to. I don't want to say for a certain until I know.
Another person important to the history that you didn't mention, but you have a lot of information for him there in the visitor center, is Louis DeMont.
Yes.
Who is a very person of national importance. We're getting ready to put up the city of Pocahontas is getting ready to put up a historic marker here downtown to him using the information you have out there.
Wonderful. Yes. Yeah. No, Mr. DeMont, very important in the town's history as well.
You run a ferry, you have to fill up mighty close. There's no way you get there with a horse anyway.
Yes.
You've got to have to live real close.
Yeah. We haven't yet found any archaeological evidence of the Scott House. But again, we still have quite a bit to survey, so it could be that that's one of those discoveries waiting to be made. If we could find that where they would have lived, that would be a really exciting find for the park.
Could you talk a little bit about Louis DeMont? Because this whole area is called DeMont, or we call it DeMont Township, Pocahontas, and I don't think most of us ever even knew who he was.
How's that spelled?
D-E-M-U-N, but
yeah.
I have two N's.
Yeah, D-E-M-U-N, you're right.
And we're DeMont Township, Susan.
Oh, okay.
See here if I can flip to it.
I thought that was big.
Too bad thing.
They built a jail, no church or school.
Yeah.
What was the history teacher out of William Baptist did a whole rotary program on Devon not too long ago.
No, it was Steve. When it's Steve Saunders from Powhatan. He's the one that's done all the research on DeMont, I think.
So DeMont
But
just
I could be wrong.
the few cliff notes here from DeMont. So DeMont, Louis DeMont, served as the president of the commission, who was appointed to pick the town site itself. He was the man in charge of that, and some of the land that went towards the town site, he contributed to that. He owned some of the land that was utilized in creation of the town. So yes, very important to pick the area that was used.
But before that, I think he was the draftsman for the architect who built the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. And some things like that.
He was also page to Marie Antoinette and very involved with Aaron Burr and his whatever Aaron Burr was doing out here. He then came to where Davidsonville would be, and in 1813 built the first thing that was built in Pocahontas, which is along Mill Creek, the first grist mill in the state.
Yes.
We also had a sawmill, which was actually within the city limits of Pocahontas.
And I think we learned most of this from Stephen Saunders, although Mr. Dunn said that maybe Dr. Startup knows a little more about it too, but Stephen Saunders over at the archives has done a lot of research on DeMont. And his background before he came to Davidsonville was truly fascinating, and here we are living in DeMont Township and didn't even realize that.
Yes, Steve Saunders he's working for Powhatan, the courthouse, specifically State Park now. But yeah, he is a wonderful, great resource, and if he were here standing next to me, I'd hand over the microphone and let him talk a little more.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, because it's one of those, every time I go over there, I go, hey Steve, tell me something new.
Maybe we'll try to get him in the next phase of our first-person series.
Steve would be a wonderful person to have come and talk either about Powhatan or Davidsonville or the area in general as well.
We're not interested in Powhatan.
Very good.
You
know any quotes you on that?
Here's what you can quote me on. We're not interested in Batesville. I'm kidding, Susan.
I
Don't
know,
quote
I
me.
know.
Yes.
There's a new technology using laser, airborne laser, that archaeologists have found to reveal the foundations that are completely covered by the ground. You're aware of this?
I've heard something similar.
I believe the acronym is LIDO or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And I've seen the results of that for other places. Wouldn't that be a good thing to bring to Old Davidsonville and discover all those houses, where they were?
That would be a wonderful thing, and it's something that because we are a state site, we have to go through the archaeological survey of Arkansas. So if that was something that they could use in conjunction, that would be fascinating to see what else they could uncover. We've used the ground, the ground version of that before, so the ground sensing radar, and I have some of the images from those searches here in the archaeological reports that have been given to the park. And so I'd be be curious to see what the aerial versus the ground looks like, to see if it's a more more defined or how that would work. But that'd be awesome if we could have something like that come out and see.
Awesome.
Wasn't Davidsonville one of the first communities besides Arkansas Post that was in what is now the state of Arkansas?
Sure.
If not the two first ones, Arkansas Post.
Yeah, so we were the first planned town in Arkansas. Arkansas Post did beat us out by a number of years as far as first town goes. We had the first post office, though. Arkansas Post got theirs 2 weeks after our post office opened, so we do have that claim to fame as far as that goes. Town was platted 1815, early 1816. After that, Little Rock comes around 1820 or so. We were one of, like I say, one of the first platted communities. There would have been other little hamlets and things like that, but nothing that was created so specifically to serve as a county seat, as far as that goes.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yes,
nice.
it was.
Yes.
Very good.
And thank you so much.
Thank you for having us out again. Like I say, I hope to see you all at the park real soon.
And some of your relatives, your parents were here.